Hello, everybody. And on behalf of MythoLogical, I welcome you all to Around the World. Today, we have Stella Kasimati with us. Stella Kasimati is an experienced workshop leader and storyteller. She teaches around the world in both Greek and English, including at Emerson College and Schumacher College, UK. Stella loves Greek myths and offers workshops on how relevant they are today. In following her passion, she's carrying a stream of Greek mythology at the School of Storytelling, Emerson College. People interested in Greek myths will be able to follow the energies of gods and goddesses and many major myths that have influenced and shaped our Western culture and civilization. She has deep passion for biographical storytelling and for enabling adults to craft and publicly perform their own or family tales with the goal of reconnecting with what it is to be human, increasing empathy and creating community. She loves teaching the craft of storyteller because it gives people a voice and empowers them to bring more of themselves into the world and make a difference. Stella is the founding director of Friends of Amari, an international association developing a storytelling center and contributing to the revival of the valley and village of Amari, her ancestral home in Crete, Greece. To follow more about her, you can read and check www.friends-of-amari.org. Stella, it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to MythoLogical.
Thank you, Akash. It's really my honor. Thank you for inviting me. Today, I'm going to share the story of Perseus with you, and then I'm going to share a few thoughts that I have on the myth, and then we will have some time, hopefully, for questions and answers. King Acrisios of Argos had only one child, a daughter, Danae. Even though she was the most beautiful maiden in the land, he was not happy. He wanted a son, an heir. So after waiting for many, many years, he decided he had to know. He went to Delphi, to the oracle of Apollo, and asked, "Will I have a son?" The priestess of the oracle replied, "No, you will not have a son, but your daughter will, and he will kill you." Well, that was much more than he expected. What should he do? He loved his daughter. He didn't want to kill her to be safe. So he locked her up in a dark dungeon, deep underground. He set savage dogs to guard over her. As Danae sat in her dark dungeon, day after day and night after night, a mysterious thing happened. Suddenly, a golden shower filled her dungeon. It was Zeus, king of the gods. He had seen her. He had seen how radiantly beautiful she was. He desired her. Love had struck him like one of his own thunderbolts. But now she was buried deep in the ground. How would he get to her? He thought, of course, he thought, rain. I'll become rain, because rain goes deep into the ground and reaches the seeds there. Rain. So he changed himself into a golden shower of rain, and Danae suddenly was embraced by a warm golden shower that lit her dark prison. 9 months later, she gave birth to a boy. She named him Perseus. Babies are not good at being quiet, so very soon the king found out about his grandson. He was angry and afraid. He couldn't kill both of them. So he locked them up in a great wooden chest. He took it out to sea and threw it into the waters. In the dark chest, Anai tightly held her baby as the waves tossed them to and fro, to and fro. Zeus was watching. He protected the chest. He sent a huge wave that seemed to lift it and carry it up and left it on the beach of the island of Seriphos before retreating. Now, a kind and poor fisherman happened to be walking along the beach that day and came upon the chest. Oh, he gave thanks to the gods, for surely this chest was full of jewels and gold. Excitedly, he opened it and found Danae and Perseus. Well, he was filled with joy. The gods had answered his prayers. This was much better than all the gold and the jewels in the world, for he and his wife were childless. Wife was just as happy as he was. They welcomed Danae and Perseus into their humble hut, into their home, and took care of them. For many, many happy years, they lived there. Perseus grew into a tall, strong young man. Now, the king of the island, Polyvectis, had not really noticed them, but now his attention was drawn by Danae, who, even after so many years, was still radiantly beautiful. He desired her. He wanted to marry her, but he didn't want her grown-up son with them. So he started to think of ways to get rid of him. Now, it was the custom in those days that when a king announced that he was going to be married and had a great feast, the guests would bring a gift, usually a horse. The king, Polyvectis, he knew very well that Perseus had no horse and also that he had no money to buy one. So perhaps he would be so ashamed that he would leave the island and he would be rid of him forever. Fantastic. That Danae did not want to marry him, did not bother him in the slightest. He announced a great feast for his wedding to be, and he invited everybody, including Perseus. Everybody brought him a gift, except Perseus. Perseus, you insult me coming here without a gift. Perseus blushed with anger, for he knew that his mother did not want to marry this man. He was a proud young man, hot-headed. He wanted to protect his mother. So he said, "Alas, my lord, I have no horse and no money to buy a horse. But if you promise you will not harm my mother and that you will not marry her against her wish, I will bring you a great present, the greatest present anyone has ever seen, a Gorgon's head, if need be." Well, thought the king, this was much better than he had expected. The Gorgon's head. Aloud, he said, "Yes, that would please me greatly, and I will not marry your mother until you return." He thought, that will be very soon, for he will quickly come back or he will quickly die, and I will be married to Danae. The Gorgon's head. What was he thinking? That meant Medusa's head, the mortal one, the one with the glaring eyes and huge teeth and tusks and a protruding tongue and brazen claws and hair, serpents, snakes instead of hair, whose gaze turned men to stone. No one could get near the Gorgons, never mind cut off Medusa's head. He had landed himself in a heap of trouble. In despair, he ran to the furthest corner of the island and sat on a rock looking out to sea, and he cried. Suddenly, Hermes, the messenger of the gods, appeared before him and told him not to worry, for he and Athene, the goddess of wisdom, would help him get Medusa's head. All he needed was Hades' helmet of invisibility, so he would be invisible to Medusa and her two immortal sisters. He needed winged sandals so that he could fly, and he needed a magic pouch which would stretch and fit whatever you put in it, so he could hide safely Medusa's head once he had cut it off, if he was lucky. For he had to do that when she was fast asleep and without looking at her. But not to worry, said Hermes. He and Athene would help him. Now, how Perseus got these three things is another story for another time. Suffice it to say that he got them. Armed now with all he needed, Athene and Hermes escorted him to the very end of the world where the Gorgons lived. They hovered high above the cave, and Athene pointed out which one was Medusa. She said, look, that one by the entrance, the one with the big belly. They were lucky, for all three sisters were fast asleep. Then Athene gave Hermes a shield that was polished so brightly it was like a mirror. And she said to him, Perseus, you must only look in the shield, never at Medusa directly, only at her reflection in the mirror. Then Hermes gave him the last thing he needed, a sharp adamantine sickle, which would not bend or break by the hard scales of the Gorgon, and would, with a clean cut, just one stroke, cut off her head, which would, with one clean stroke, cut off her head. Armed now with all he needed, Perseus put on his winged sandals and his helmet of invisibility. He tied the pouch to his belt. He held the shield and the sickle. He was ready. Athene and Hermes left. He came a bit closer to the cave, and the stench made him want to vomit. His heart was beating fast with fear as he neared Medusa, always looking at her in the shield, as Athene had told him to. With one clean stroke, he cut off her head. He swooped low, grabbed it, and dropped it into the pouch, which closed over it. He flew away, just in time to see the beautiful winged white horse, Pegasus, spring from Medusa's severed neck. That woke up her two sisters, who started shrieking and yelling and searching for whoever that was there, who was there, but they could see no one, for Perseus was invisible. He flew from the end of the world. On his way back, he passed over Ethiopia, He looked down, and there he saw a beautiful maiden tied to a rock at the edge of the sea, waiting for a horrible sea monster to devour her. Now, how she came to be there is another story for another time. Suffice it to say that Perseus saw her and instantly fell in love. He went and stood beside her and waited for the monster. As soon as it appeared, he cut off its head, one clean strike, just as he had the Medusa's. Body and head of the monster sank deep into the waves. He freed Andromeda and took her to her parents. He asked for her hand in marriage, and, well, they said yes. They were so happy to have such a hero as their son-in-law. Soon after the great wedding, Perseus took Andromeda on a sea voyage back to the island of Seriphos. As soon as he arrived, he went to look for his mother in the humble hut that he had spent so many happy years. But there was no one there. He asked and learned that the fisherman's wife had died, and the fisherman had taken his mother to a temple to seek refuge, for the king was forcing her to marry him against her will, saying that Perseus was long dead. No one stood a chance against the Gorgons. Perseus had heard enough. He left Andromeda in the humble hut and went straight to the palace. He entered the throne room where the king and all his loyal noblemen were gathered. All eyes were on this tall, proud young man, holding Athene's shiny shield. "I am back," he said. "Empty-handed, I suspect," was the king's reply. "No, look." He took out the head of the Gorgon for all to see and turn to stone. Perseus gave back the gifts the gods had lent him, and Athene placed the Gorgon's head on her shield. It protected her from all enemies. He took his mother and his wife, and they headed back home for Argos to find his grandfather and be reconciled. What happened there is another story for another time. Suffice it to say that the prophecy came true, and Perseus accidentally did kill his old grandfather. He went on many adventures, but what made him a hero was his greatest adventure of all, the slaying of Medusa. There are many interesting things about this myth. First of all, it is of Palestinian origin and not Greek. So as such, it has some unusual features, like it is very much like a fairy tale. It has, the common motif of the chest or the mermaid bringing a poor fisherman a lot of luck and happiness. It has the rescuing the maiden in distress and the hero going through a lot of trials and killing dragons. So it has those features of a fairy tale and even sounds a little bit like a fairy tale. One of the few Greek myths that actually ends and they lived happily ever after. Also, the word Perseus is not Greek, I think, even though some scholars have tried to make a connection with the word Pertho. So they say Perseus means destroyer or conqueror. But I feel that it is closer to the ancient Egyptian word Perse, which means the son of Isis. Isis was the Egyptian goddess, associated with many things, among others, the rites connected with death. And there are other hints of connections with death. The names Medusa and Andromache, Andromeda. Sorry, not Andromache. It's like Medusa and Andromeda. They both seem to have a common origin, which is also linked to Hades. And those three words are Greek. I have a soft spot or a special passion for how the patriarchy has changed myths and stories. And the myth of Medusa and Perseus is a very clear and good example, I feel. For there is a very old Greek legend that says that the king of Libya, in the very, very old times, had a beautiful daughter. Her name was Medusa. She was so beautiful, she took people's breath away. When he died, she became queen. She was an amazing queen. She led her people to war. She led her people in the hunt. She was wise. She was just. She was well loved. People followed her. They were devoted to her and trusted her. She was a great, a warrior queen. It happened that there was a war with Greece, and Perseus was there. In combat with the queen, cut off her head. He looked at the beautiful head and he thought, I can't leave this here. He took it with him to show his friends what godly beauty might look like. There is a place near Argos, which people say and show as the place where Perseus eventually buried Medusa's beautiful head. Now compare that to the story we've heard. It is really, it turns it on its belly, it turns it upside down. And this is long, long, long before the story we heard. In a time when the goddess was worshipped, in the matriarchal times. And in those times, powerful goddesses and women were considered virgin. Now, virgin at that time did not mean a woman who had not had sex. It meant a strong woman, a woman who was independent and who was one in herself. Well, such a warrior queen, I would think, was considered a virgin. And it was the custom for when a virgin wanted to show her surrender to the great goddess, she would make love in a temple with a stranger. And what is the story of Medusa? How that has been turned around into Poseidon raping her in Athene's temple. And Athene, who herself is a virgin goddess, being so cross at this blasphemy, not at this honor, at this blasphemy, that she turned Medusa into the ugly monster that we know her. It makes me think how important it is to be aware of who and what stories serve and how they are changed in the times. And stories and myths, they do change. They evolve with each teller, with the times. They go along with the values and the rules of the current times. So as storytellers, I think it is really good to know who and what we serve with our voice.
Wow, Stella, that was really good. I mean, I like the way said that storytellers must know what they say and how they say it. Uh, though the Perseus story is quite well known to many of us, I think you brought in very interesting angles to it. It's an often repeated story in schools and even in mythological classes. But I thought the way you brought it out and the elements that you added, they were really interesting. And I like the way you even brought in the aspect of Medusa and how patriarchy sees those elements. They were very interesting. We have a few questions, Stella, and I'll just take them. Um, Somebody's asked this question saying that, do you find any significant role for females, women, in Greek myths, other than women being either seductresses or jealous wives or even dangerous creatures?
Yes, I think there are some sort of leading roles. Of course, Greek mythology is a balance in the patriarch matriarch sort of curve, and it's going towards the matriarchy. It's actually the gods of the north and the sky gods that are taking over. But there are roles like Athene, who's the goddess of wisdom, and
Right.
who actually cannot, Zeus cannot do anything without her, really. And there is Artemis, who is the protectress of the wild and the hunt, and she is a virgin goddess. Both Artemis and Athene are virgin goddesses, definitely not seductresses. And then there are very powerful figures like Medea or Medusa, or even Aphrodite. So I do think there are powerful female characters in Greek mythology, yes.
Okay, interesting. One question somebody's asked that, he wants to know, is Perseus a hero at all? I mean, without magical boots, without the cap, the shields, etc., would he have managed to kill Medusa?
Well, that's a good question for all fairy tales, really. Are heroes of all fairy tales heroes at all? Yeah, because they have so much help along the way. And I think that that is a reflection of the help that we have if we are open to the signs. When we are in a desperate place, there is an old lady at the end of the road giving us, an indication of where we should go. There are ants that sort of come to our help. It's a lovely metaphor for life itself and how we're not alone.
I like that. You remind me of what my mother had once said, that if there is a problem, there is a solution around. You just need to look out. And I think you said it so well. And just reminded me of, what she would often say. Good. Thank you very much. That's an interesting answer. One question I have, and that is, what do you think, why do you think Medusa appeals to us so much? I mean, is it time to kind of reimagine her?
Time to reimagine her. I think it's time for all myths to be made relevant to us. And I don't think that that is by playing with them, by reimagining them all by playing with the thread with their bones, because those are the ones that are deep in our psyche. But having said that, we can see how they are relevant and also understand how the patriarchy has actually meddled with them. I am not for changing the bones of a myth. I don't think that works.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's one more question. I'm not sure of this, but I'll just ask. Is it true that Medusa had married Janus? I'm sorry, I think he means Jason, the guy who had stolen the golden fleece.
Medea.
No,
Medea.
I think he's missing, he means media, right?
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next. Do you think Percy Jackson books helped the myth of Perseus, or they didn't? I know I touched a raw nerve, but it's a question, so I guess I have to ask.
I'm not a fan of Percy Jackson. I think that it does really more harm than good, because it's sort of like a fast food hero of the time, and it's just a mishmash of all really powerful archetypal figures, and the children have to have guidance in order to go from Percy Jackson to actually looking at Greek myths. Because many people say, oh, it's an introduction, and they get interested in Greek myths. They do, a few of them do, but they do need that guidance. Mm-hmm. And Greek myths are so sort of jumbled and given in such a way that I don't think a child or an adult has any idea of them after reading Percy Jackson. Percy is actually an interesting name, because there is a version that says that Perseus and Andromeda, when they married, they had a child and they named him Percy. And so Perseus didn't leave straight away after their marriage, but stayed on for a bit. And they left Percy, their son, with their grandparents. And he became the founder of the Persian nation. Mm-hmm. So there was a Percy in Greek mythology.
Okay. Yeah. Right. This seems to be a long answer, but I'll just take one last question before we move on. Can you tell us of some interesting anthropological work happening in the world of Greek mythology?
I mean, excavations and things. There are a lot of excavations. I'm not. I don't have a tip of my fingers right now, but a lot of excavations, and especially where I come from, Crete, there are a lot of things being discovered about the Minoan age. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Minoan civilization.
Right. Stella, one can go on.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Which was actually a goddess-led civilization.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Right. Stella, we can go on chatting with you and listening to you. And I know I've heard you tell stories and in workshops, and I must say they are just wonderful. Next time you're in India and Mumbai, definitely we're sitting together for some longer sessions. And I'm sure Team MythoLogical will be very, very happy to host you for some more of these sessions. We're running out of time, friends. So please send in your questions. We will share them with Stella and take them as and when the session is over. But right now, thank you very much, Stella, for joining us for MythoLogical and the sessions today. Thank you very much.